Ituktikaro. Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry Bruno. I will be your moderator today. I'm a consultant with the Tribal Youth Resource Center, and I'm excited to be here with you. And I'd like to invite Tui Ethleen for her introduction.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mitakuyepi, my relatives. I'm Ethleen Ironcloud Two Dogs. I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Manager for the Tribal Youth Resource Center. Welcome.
And we have Sister Deborah Tobacco.
Ihani Washte, Iyohaki. I want to welcome you today, and I'm the Training and Technical Assistance for Tribal Youth Resources, and I will be co-hosting today. Lamaya.
And we'd like to invite Tui Ethleen to give us a beautiful opening and get us grounded for today's session.
Thank you, Tosha, Jerry, and I'd like to greet our relatives, facilitators, my Chapkashi Frankie, my Chukshi Deb, Mushke Steph, Toshan Laura, Toshan Antonia, all of them that made this possible. Thank you so much. So as you all know, we always start everything with an offering, with an opening, because we're only human beings and we need all the help we can get. So I invite you to take off your glasses, sit back. If you're standing, just relax. Drop your shoulders, close your eyes, and visualize our people happy, healthy, no violence. Everybody has what they need. Nobody's hungry. Nobody's getting abused. And our nations are strong. So just imagine that while I offer this opening in my Lakota language. Tunkashila na unchi wopila tranka chichape. Le ampetu unyakupina. Tunkashila na unchi le omnicha unhapik te ki oyakapi. Hechel taku imungla kapi ki oyate iwaste pikte. Iotna wa kainja na trecha piki iwaste pikte. Wopila tranka mitakuye oyasi. Thank you.
Thank you, Tui Ethleen. Once again, beautiful. Thank you for the grounding and bringing us all together, connectedness together. I'm very excited and welcome all of you that have joined us here today. And I'd like to move to our next slide so that you can meet our guests. And so our first guest is going to give us a beautiful introduction of herself. So Miss Frankie Whitedress.
Hi, my name is Frankie Whitedress. I'm from Pine Ridge. I've lived here all my life, except for when I went to school, college. I'm a mother, a grandmother. I'm a foster parent. I've been a foster parent for about 25 years. And I'm a old retired teacher. I retired in 2015. And then the tribe asked me to work at the shelter temporarily until they could hire a director at the youth shelter. And I enjoyed the work so much that I applied and got the position, and I've been here for 5 years now. Well, 5.5 years. And it's a lot of work. I work long hours, and it's very fulfilling work. I really enjoy it. I'm married. I live right outside of Pine Ridge. I have 2 grown children. My son passed away, but my husband, my current husband, and I have adopted 7 children, and we have 4 at home now. Well, one's a grandchild. We have a grandchild. We have 2 foster kids, and we have 3 adopted kids at home yet that we're raising. I can't think of anything else as we go along.
Thank you so much, Frankie. And wow, I mean, thank you for taking care of all the children. Gosh, I think if I were in your area, I would want to go and say, "Can I be adopted?" So it sounds like there's a lot of love. There's a lot of love in your home. So thank you so much. And our next guest, if we move to our next slide, please. Like to invite her to give her introduction.
So, hi everyone. My name is Alejandra. I'm First Nations Ojibwa Cree, and just a little bit about me is that I am a former foster youth and experienced youth homelessness when I was younger. And because of that, I am now an advocate and an Indigenous activist for my community. I want to prioritize making sure that Black, Indigenous, and youth of color are always heard when talking about the foster care system, and always prioritized when we talk about mental health and also like the awareness within Black, Indigenous, and youth of color going and experiencing youth homelessness. So I just want to thank all of you for letting me participate in this and just sharing this energy with you and just sharing my story and being able to uplift Indigenous youth that have experienced homelessness and making sure that our people are heard.
Thank you, Alejandra. And also, I want you to know about Alejandra that she has worked at the national level. She spoke at the White House Youth Summit, and she has really created a great space for youth's voice. So excited to have you as well, Alejandra. And our next guest, I'd like to invite her on up to share her introduction.
Bonjour, Anine, Nindana Sikwe. I'm a member of the White Earth Nation of Ojibwe. I am Bear Clan of the Pine Point community. And I just want to thank everyone for taking time out to give us the opportunity to share our stories and experiences. I am a sister, auntie, mom of 2 grown children, a horse enthusiast, and really my whole life has been given to our young people that we serve in the American Indian community, working for our people. I've spent a lifetime, being a visionary, providing everyone that I, come across opportunity for visionary leadership and just really, helping our people navigate complex systems and really advocating for systems change. I'm the executive director of Ingda Young Center, a pretty awesome little program in the Twin Cities. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Sherry, as well, for the amazing work that you're doing and just going hard for our young people. And I think that's why it's important that we have all of you here as our guests today, as we're moving into a really powerful time with our young people and the work that's happening that you're all doing. And so happy, Sherry, that you're able to join us with such a busy schedule that you do have. So let's move on to our next slide and start the conversation of, where have we been and where we're going here today. And that our first OLA that we had, our online learning event with Unsheltered and Runaway Youth, was really about learning, and focused on the root causes and solutions related to unsheltered and runaway Native youth across Indian country. And I think it's really important that we are addressing this and coming to this now in this critical time of coming out of COVID. That we're still in a healing space and period. When we're in trauma, at the world has been in trauma, that we're also looking at the increase numbers of our unsheltered and our runaway youth today. Next slide, please. So we had covered in this first online learning event some very important objectives, as I mentioned, the root causes of why our young people are unsheltered and run away from home and community, and that there's really looking at this coexisting issues that unsheltered and runaway youth have faced and facing now, and that's from families and their circumstances that are challenging. It could be from that financial to losing a home to all of the other causes that happen to our communities, from abuse to alcohol to all of those kinds of issues. That is one of those coexisting issues to our looking at the vulnerability that we talked about in this OLE to our children and families that are exposed to physical, mental, and developmental issues. And so this will also be, that cause. So there's, when we talked about it in the first OLE, there's this misunderstanding that happens about our unsheltered and runaway young people that that they choose to do that, and a lot of times that is not the issue. They're have a lot of different kinds of coexisting challenges that happened why a young person would leave home or that they're unsheltered. So I think that this first OLE was really great at sharing. If you weren't able to join us in that, there is a recording of that. And that we want to also look at, that we looked at in the past too, that a lot of times these numbers or these statistics that we have are not accurate, because there are families that are not reporting, due to just feeling, embarrassment that they are unsheltered, or there's shame involved, or there's a lot of different kinds of issues that may come into place of why they are not, expressing or sharing, or that we're not capturing those numbers of families and young people. And there are times too with our young people that are having these challenges, that we talked about in the first OLE was, couch surfing, right? Like, so that those numbers aren't getting captured because a lot of your young people might be couch surfing, staying at friend's house or moving to someone else's place. And so those numbers aren't also not getting captured as well. So, I think this is why this OLE, as we move into it, is going to be really powerful and helpful for us today, that we're looking at, this session to creating support for unsheltered and runaway Native youth. And we want to increase those protective factors. And we want to, look at these very important objectives that we're going to share with you here in the next slide. So as we're moving forward, you may have resources that you could put in the chat. You may have some other thoughts and ideas, and we will have time for a Q&A. So we really want to, get this conversation going so that we're able to really move through some good solutions and some strategies that will be helpful. And if you have solutions and strategies and you want to put those right into the chat, please do so. This again is a conversation that we want to create with our community here today, even though we're virtual. Next slide, please.
Thank you. And again, welcome everybody. I just wanted to share some learning objectives for this OLE. And today our focus is on increasing knowledge of prevention and intervention strategies being implemented in Native youth shelters that are providing to be successful working with unsheltered and runaway Native youth. And also increasing our understanding of the inherent needs and resilience of Native youth. Because as Sister Jerry mentioned that the needs of our Native youth in each geographical location is different. And working in our communities and in our environments, we learn those unique needs. So today, sharing some of those differences with our presenters, our wisdom keepers, is imperative to just learning how to expand and increase our knowledge in that. And also wanted to, in addition to that, increase our knowledge of data collection strategies and resources to support our grantees, and so that you can better support your community members. And for program development, it's essential to collect data, but also to collect relevant data. And so we'll learn some of those strategies today, in addition to providing a peer learning forum for our grantees for Tribal Youth Resources, Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, and to discuss the needs of this specific Native youth population, the unsheltered and runaway youth. Thank you. Next slide.
So we'd like you to answer our poll, and the question is here today: how knowledgeable are you on the issues of unsheltered and runaway youth in your community? Are you not knowledgeable at all? Do you have a little bit of knowledge, knowledgeable, or very knowledgeable? So just take a moment right now and just give us a quick answer on this poll, and it'll help really guide us. I'm excited to see what and who we have as you're taking the poll. Where are some of you coming in from? Put that in the chat. Let me know. Are you urban? Are you dialing in, zooming in from where? If you've already answered the poll, we've got Huslia, Alaska, Cherokee Nation, awesome. Blackfeet, oh, that's nice. Peach Springs, Oregon. Where in Oregon? I'm from Oregon. New York, Albuquerque. Oh, we have another Wallapai tribe from Peach Springs. I love going down there, and I like to also take your go rafting along the Colorado River there. Central Oregon, that's home. Yes, that's home. Hello, Yolanda. We've got Wallapai tribe, Probation and Wellness Court. We also have Omaha, nice. Rapid City, Chiloquin, yay. I've got some people from home as well. I'm excited about that. So welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time for taking the poll, and also letting us know where you are coming in from. Super exciting. It's so important. So as we're moving forward here, Antonia's going to give us what the poll looks like. Great. So we have about 24% of you not knowledgeable. This is good. A little bit knowledgeable, 48% of you, and knowledgeable. So about 29%. So I think it's important we have a good balance in our audience here today, and that, you know, for those that are knowledgeable, we are open to really collecting as much information as we can because of this important issue that we're working on here today. So thank you for that. Let's move to the next slide, please.
That's great that we have so much knowledge in this area, because
prevalence of Native youth homelessness is again an issue that we really need to work on, learning how to incorporate and implement a lot of other strategies in addressing the issue. In working in research, I always find that it's interesting of how much these statistics change, and especially when those of us that are providing direct services are addressing it, it's improving. And I just wanted to share some research in regards to a study that was conducted in 2019. In 2019, a national research study titled Prevalence of Homeless Among American Indian and Alaska Native Youth showed that 25,492 responders of that study revealed that the highest prevalence of homeless among adolescents and youth ages 13 to 25. That's astounding. And during a 12-month span, approximately 10.2% of American Indian Alaska Native households with 13 to 17-year-olds reported youth homelessness or runaway experiences that lasted at least one night. And I think in our home communities, a lot of the undocumented cases are that youth going to relatives home to home. So they're not really documented as runaway, but unsheltered. And I think that's something significant that we should be aware of. Also, approximately 12.2 American Indian Alaska Native households with 18 to 25-year-olds reported youth homelessness or runaway experiences that lasted the one night. And again, there's so many cases that go undocumented. So prevalence of reported youth homelessness, runaway experiences among American Indian Alaska Native youth adults was 3 times that of their white Hispanic peers. So I think that's something that is good to be noted. Again, in our communities, youth moving to relatives. I don't think that's something that's been really addressed, but you might find that in your own communities, and it would be something to document in your data collection and just learning about the youth stories. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Sister Deb. That really kind of sets the framework of, the importance of this work that we're doing here today. And we have our wonderful knowledge keepers, our wisdom keepers that are going to be sharing with us. And I want to start this conversation and asking Frankie first, can you share 1 or 2 services your shelter provides that have best supported youth to transition into safe and permanent living environments?
Yeah. Well, a lot of most of our referrals for shelter here are from CPS, and we have to push CPS. We say, well, what's the plan? You're not just going to leave them here. What is the plan? And we help them with documenting things that we see that we think they need. While we get them a lot of assessments, we give them a lot of, we do a lot of groups with them. We take them into activities. Everything we notice, we report to CPS, and we really help CPS. We really push them to get some kind of services for them. Most of the kids need therapeutic type services for mental health. A lot of them come angry. They're angry about their situation. And we know anger comes from fear. And so it's really the fear of what's going to happen to me, and they should be looking at who am I going to be, but it's what's going to happen to me. Where am I going to sleep next? And so we try to push people to cooperate with us, because we don't have much. We have small budget and few personnel, but we really try to pull others in to help us. and to help the kids, to get them the services they need.
That's really powerful, Frankie, and I really appreciate that because I really heard you saying what's going to happen to me, and I think that's really key, right? Because they don't have that normal, um, uh, that normal way of growing in their development where they're supposed to be asking, who am I, why am I, where am I going? So that's really, really important to keep as we're moving forward, that question and how we're helping them to feel safe that they're not asking that question anymore. And I'd like to go ahead and ask Sherry to also share with you, one or two services that your shelter provides, that will help support the youth in their transitions.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this long and hard. It's not that we have a lack of service, but we really have a plethora of services that we provide. When I really think about when a young person comes to our emergency shelter, our case manager plays a most vital role, almost like an auntie, uncle, making sure that their basic needs are met first and foremost before we jump into all the evaluation tools that we're supposed to collect for the state as a shelter. But that case manager, we have wraparound services, providing support for that young person, and really making sure that we connect them to not only the services that we have, but try and re-engage them with their families if possible, and locating kin if they're not in a good place with the family, or it's just impossible. Our unoccupied, or not our unaccompanied youth come to us for reasons, and oftentimes it's abuse or misunderstanding of gender identity. And so we really work hard with individuals, with our community, to sew up those relationships or make new relatives, right? And we have our culture and prevention programs. So our advocates, most of the staff that we have on board have lived experience. So they know the stories, maybe a little different, but it's important that we're engaging our young people, and sometimes sharing story is really helpful in finding common place, and I think it's really important, because we want to build trust, and when our young people come to us, they come, in survival, they're really heavy in survival mode and building that trust. So, and then if we look in the long term, we have transitional living for our young people, and really trying to transition them there if they're with us. We've had young people come through our door and go, literally grow up through our programs, the transitional living program, and we built a supportive housing unit for those 18 and older. So we really have an ecosystem of programming, but also making sure that we meet that young person's holistic needs.
Oh, that's powerful. And you really, framed out some of those very specific needs. And I really appreciate that, Sherry. And that really kind of leads into, as you talked about lived experience, the young people lived experience. And we have Alejandra, who's already mentioned that, she's been in the system. She has that lived experience, and how we look at the voice of those young people that have lived experience as they're the experts as those youth, and listening to them. And so I'd like to ask you, Alejandra, like as a young person, why is it so important for you to create support for unsheltered and runaway Native youth?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jerry, for asking that. And first, I just want to have us just acknowledge the statistics within our communities being marginalized and being at like an extreme rate of Indigenous youth that are unsheltered and that are going into shelters and that are going into the foster care system. It's important that we really understand how prevalent it is within our communities and how important it is that we prioritize our youth. For me, just hearing all of this is so beautiful to know that there are people out there that are wanting to support our communities and really critically thinking and wondering, how can we best support our Indigenous youth? Like Sister Jerry was talking about, I have worked at a national level advocating for Native youth, but a statewide level advocating for youth homelessness in California. And that was in that experience of understanding federally what could be done within funding and then statewide, but and understanding what can we do for our relatives and our communities without thinking about colonialism and thinking about how the government is in it, thinking more about how we as a community, as Indigenous people, can support our communities and make sure that youth are being heard. I was hearing a lot about how statistically we are not talking about youth that are couch surfing, that are going from home to home, because that isn't really like quote unquote youth homelessness. And that is actually a really big issue within California. When we're discussing youth homelessness, we're not really acknowledging that there are different types of homelessness and expanding that. There is a need to create platforms for open dialogue and listening to youth with lived experience, like me being on this platform with my own lived experience with youth homelessness when I was younger, having my own parent experience that when she was younger, and how it's a cycle. It's valuing youth input and understanding that when we discuss these things, we need to prioritize youth with lived experience and make sure that we are, letting them know that we're here to serve you and we're here to make sure that your voices are heard and prioritized. I think oftentimes when we are in these circles, it becomes normalized and it becomes something that we talk about every day, especially when you're in these circles, when you're doing it federally or statewide, without really understanding what we're all genuinely sitting here right now in the space, and really understanding that we all hold such a big impact on these youth lives, and you every day by being in those shelters and by supporting these youth, you have no idea how big of an impact you're making on this youth's life. So for me, it's just that understanding of how valuable our lived experience is, but also the understanding that we are making an impact as well. So thank you.
Very powerful. Thank you, Alejandra. And that, just moves me into asking, starting with Sherry, this next question is that, Sherry, can you then share some strategies that you found that were very successful engaging community or your tribal leaders, maybe the funders and partners that you've developed? And then how did you use those to grow and sustain your youth shelter services? I know it's a big question.
That was definitely a lunch-loaded baked potato for sure. But the thing is in Minnesota, we have, I know a lot of the country has looked to us for answers and how we do things in Minnesota, though we still statistically have the highest out-of-home placement anywhere in the country, which is astounding to me, or dumbfounding. But so we regularly do a lot of outreach with our tribes. Just an hour ago, we hosted a luncheon with the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, and with the counties, inviting Dakota County and the same to talk about the services that we provide. But we are very fortunate to have a very good, I know it sounds scary to people when you say we have a very good relationship with our local county, the two largest counties in Minnesota, a good relationship with social services. So we provide a safety net. We've also provided a lot of technical assistance to them on how to work with our people and have been able to turn around our out-of-home placement that way. But really doing a lot of outreach, not waiting for them to come to us, but having a conversation, trying to get a hold of the administrators at the county level, or, being able to advocate our statistics at the legislature, and, really drawing that attention to the counties. So we have counties in Minnesota. We have 87 counties. But with our two largest is getting before the county board and being able to, talk about the need and really advocating. And we have very strong relationships with those individuals, but it's taken, a lot of work to get there, right? A lot of relationship building. And then when you talk about funders, what we do annually is we host an open house to our programs. And we invite, our local, city council member, our county board, county commissioners. We invite our funders. We invite our community. That's our opportunity to talk about youth homelessness, to talk about out-of-home placement. We also recognize we have allies. And so we recognize allies, we call them out and, we, give them a blanket for the achievements that they've made, and helped us. So we have a lot of strategies. I mean, I think it's endless. I realize that other states and jurisdictions, the relationships may not be, but it took us 40 years to build these relationships too. So any advice that we can do to help other, communities strategize, we're here to do that.
That's fantastic. I was diligently taking notes as you're sharing. And I think that that's really, really important. And thank you for being that resource as well on top of the work that you're doing. And I'd like to just kind of extend this question on over to you, Frankie, as well. Some of the strategies that you use that have been successful engaging community, and also those strategies also that helped with sustaining your youth shelter services.
Yeah. Well, we start out with, contacting other service providers that have the same kinds of objectives that we do at Indian Health Service, the schools, communities, nonprofits, and the state. We work with them, we contact them and just kind of pull them in, ask them to sit on, like when we do assessments, to sit on our panel to go over assessments and make recommendations, things like that. That way is successful, but there's lots of turnover. That's what really hampers us, is the turnover, especially in social service programs. And that's for a lot of different reasons. But in the tribe too, in tribal programs that have the same objectives as us, they're easy to work with and easy to pull in to help. But tribal administrators seem to be more focused on youth that have accomplished things, that have two parents and got through school and have straight A's and are going to college and had a home all during their youth. And they really honor those people. And I can see that they're trying to use them as an example for other youth. But a lot of times they forget about us. And when we talk to, like when I talk to the executive director of the tribe, and I've invited him over and tell him what we do and tour our shelter, then he goes, wow, you guys really do a lot. And that's commendable and admirable, and he works with us to try to help us meet our needs. So, but even in the schools, I worked in the schools for over, well over 45 years. I worked in the schools in all different areas. I was a teacher for a number of years in all grades, at all levels, and I worked in administration. I retired as a principal, but it was really different. There's a lot of problems in there with youth in school and keeping them in school. And, but it's really different from the Runaway and the Unsheltered. First of all, they don't always go to school. And so they get missed by people that might be able to help them because they go into the schools. So that makes it a bigger challenge. But we just have to go out and make our needs known, make people aware of what we do and how big the problem is. And you know, if they don't see and if they don't help these youth, they're going to end up with the bigger problem of delinquency. We have a lot of youth. We have 13-year-olds around here carrying guns. I'm not sure if they're homeless because they haven't come to our shelter, but there's young gangs going around and they beat up people that got guns, and the murder rate's going up. It's you know, all this meth stuff being infested in our communities. So we have to be loud. We have to let people know who we are, why we're here, and what we need. And we really need their attention.
Thank you, Frankie. I think that's really important to, bring forward that this that where that focus is, and the strategies, of what we've got to do to get out there to bring that awareness and to really let our I apologize, to let our youth know, that they're important no matter where they're at, right? And I think that
Right.
letting them know that importance of, because a lot of our youth in this position that they're in right now with being unsheltered and running away, it has nothing to do with them being not smart or not doing good in school or anything like that. And I think that, that's something that they become that invisible, So I really appreciate you sharing with us these strategies. And as we're continuing to move forward in this conversation, that we'll start unpacking a little bit more. So thank you so much, Frankie. And I'm going to now just kind of lean on Alejandra, as a young person, that what are some suggestions that you might have, that can help our tribes seeking to develop and build a youth shelter that can best engage our young people, Alejandra?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry. So first, it's the understanding that, all of us and were at one point like a youth with, all of us were young at one point. So it's understanding and, giving like empathy and understanding that, let's not fear these youth. Let's not, like categorize them in certain ways. I think I really resonate with what Jerry said regarding understanding that these youth especially are maybe not going to school or maybe not prioritizing these things because of our own lived experience. And we're, especially with me, when I was in the foster care system, I had a really hard time focusing in school because I was dealing with survival and I was in survival mode. And so I wasn't able to actively sit there and listen. And there was another thing I heard as well with youth coming in angry, that's dealing with a lot of trauma, dealing with a lot of not having somebody there to support. And things that I was hearing that were suggestions were like peer support, understanding mental health. It's also understanding that investment is so important when we're talking about shelters, which goes into federal and state. But what people can do and what shelters can do is, again, address, the stigma and fear. Many youth in general hesitate to seek shelter sometimes because of stigma associated with being homeless or unsheltered. And that is creating an environment that fosters trust and understanding. Again, that is bringing the community in, making sure that this is a communal thing, because as Indigenous people in general, before borders, we would travel to each other and we would, engage in conversation and understanding. And that has to do with our youth as well, understanding that these youth have emotions, that they need to be heard and that they need to be acknowledged. And it's lack of awareness, again, within how we just discussed, some youth will not be going to school because they're in survival and they're focusing on different things. You know, within community, it's engaging, letting everybody know, hey, we have these shelters that are over here. Hey, we have these support systems. Outreach is so important. I know when I was in Sonoma County, we were doing the First 100, which was, I had an opportunity to house over 100 youth. And we did a lot of outreach. We were looking around, seeing where are the pockets of where youth are, you know, staying, going through channels, going through making sure that other youth understand how important it is that if you see your own community, you know, going through homelessness, couch surfing, you know, how can we make sure that youth are actively being leaders themselves and making sure that their community is heard? There's barriers within entry as well. You know, it's understanding that there's some complex intake and procedures. There's criteria that might differ from different youth. So it's simplifying the process and ensuring inclusivity when we are improving access. Location and transportation as well. Again, within being in Sonoma County, certain locations would be really far away from youth. And with me being in the foster care system, I lived in a very rural area. And the closest homeless shelter was probably a town away. So again, having accessible transportation and resources for these youth to be able to find it. And again, cultural sensitivity, understanding that, you know, as a whole, you know, Turtle Island is different. There's different cultures, there's different, we're not, although the US would like to bunch us all into just being one indigenous perspective, we hold different perspectives and different cultures, and understanding that how can we enhance that and how can we incorporate cultural practices and traditions when we are talking to youth, making sure that that they're heard and that they're, you know, that they have the peer support. So just basically addressing these challenges can support youth when we are having them come into these spaces.
Thank you, Alejandra. I appreciate you kind of like filling in some of these gaps of, you know, that we don't always know what the youth are thinking too, and that you're out there actively doing the you know, feet on the ground and outreaching to them. So, you know, that is really powerful. And I also want to just kind of add to, you know, you talked about a little bit, you know, the stigmas that happen. And that's what we're talking about, the invisible children, there are invisible youth. And so, you know, is there some certain, and I want to address this question now to Frankie, and then it'll be to Sherry, like certain services that your shelter provides that will best, you know, support youth, and then helping them to, you know, to transition into that safe space, that permanent living environment. Like, you know, like you'll have some that might be there, but how do we help them get into that permanent living environment? So Frankie, could you share with us maybe one or two of your services that you have provided?
Okay, some of the kids that have gone to foster homes and are local, we still include them in some of our activities. And we like to have really good cultural type activities. And we include them. We've had to fight for vehicles. We've over the years, but we have we have a nice van and a big SUV. We transport them, we pick them up when they go into foster homes, and we continue caring for them. And let's see other services that we provide. We just I can't really think of anything else. We usually follow them. We follow what happens to them. If they go to treatment, we follow them. Sometimes they come back after treatment services and stay for a while, but mostly they're placed in families or foster homes, and we try to include them in all of our activities. And the thing what we want, the thing we want them to do, our biggest job here, our most important job, is to make them feel safe without locking them in. We're not a lockdown situation, and we really express that to them. We try to give them as much freedom as possible, but we also watch very closely so that they feel that they're safe, protected, and cared for.
That's so important, right? And I really liked how you said we follow them, and I think that helps leads them
Yeah.
into that permanent living environment that they could feel safe enough. So, and especially if they've gone to treatment, they're able to come back. I think that's really key, Frankie, as one of those other key strategies that you've been sharing and you all have been sharing. I keep hearing too, and I hear this a lot in our communities. Transportation is
Uh-huh.
really a challenge and is something really important as well. So I appreciate that, Frankie. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Sherry if she could also share some of the strategies you've all provided, to move them on into that permanent living space.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. For us, we're part of a larger network of street outreach workers. And there's 16 youth serving organizations, probably more than that now across the Twin Cities, but we all, work hard for all youth, but they know that we're the only American Indian youth serving organization in the Twin Cities. So we have 3 outreach workers and 2 safe harbor outreach workers that meet the youth where they're at, going into their spaces, encampments, within our Metro Transit, libraries, wherever we know youth are is where we go. And then when we're able to get them into our spaces, like I said, working on the patients, building trust, helping them feel safe and reducing those harmful self-sabotaging survival skills that often happen. And, I just want to, say that, the youth voice, listening to Alejandra, talk about, the voice that is deeply embedded in everything that we do at Ainda Young Center, from the conception of our emergency shelter. Youth's voice was very important in bringing the shelter together. And in fact, our first executive director was lived experience, Debbie Strong. And she was 21 years old, but she was a teenager when she started the vision, working with the vision. We have the transitional living program. And then you talk about, getting them into our supportive housing. We've worked with them through the 2 layers of emergency, transitional, and then housing. When that 42 unit supportive housing unit was built, it was built on a dream and a dream of the community. But the first thing we did was create an advisory of young people that had lived experience, former long-term foster care youth, that helped plan. They worked with us with the city to look at the city plots. They planned the spaces. They planned what the spaces would look like. They planned it off the light rail, that it was important that it wasn't back in their old neighborhood. They chose the space. And we as the adults listened. They worked with our elder when the naming was happening, and so it was really important. And then just really embracing, as I think I heard Frankie talking earlier, just really emerging them in our community, making relatives, but also the cultural and traditional ways, so that a lot of these our youth that we work with don't have that, maybe never had that, and there's a shame base, in not knowing, and then we don't give them the chance to feel shameful. We start as soon as they walk in our door, with the smudging and taking them to drum and dance, and so it's really a cohesive very natural process that we try to keep here, and celebrate our young people.
And I love hearing that, as you and Frankie share, and Alejandra, that our culture is really, really important and key to their own journey and healing journey, right? And that I loved how you shared about it's natural. and allowing them to really naturally fall into who they already are, and knowing who they are, and giving them that space. I absolutely love that. And I'd like to, I know we're kind of getting down to, our time here, but I'd like to ask, and thank you, Sherry. And I'd like to ask Alejandra now, maybe what do you feel are real critical components for youth shelters for our youth today? And I know you'd mentioned some.
Yes, so thank you so much. So I would say what everyone's been saying is like, so all of the above to everything, But first, it's lived experience, making sure that we have people that have lived experience, that are able there to be there to share their own experience. Because as like a former foster youth, I was at the National Foster Care Institute, and to be able to see other foster youth be successful was something that was so important to me and made me feel like I had a possibility. Two, again, culture awareness, making sure that these youth know that, you might have not been able to grow up with and understanding your culture, but here you are, you're in a community, and we're here to show you, not shaming. And again, three, mental health awareness, making sure that when we discuss the foster care system, when we discuss youth homelessness, we have to address mental health. We have to address the stigmas going into shelters to foster care, but also within the mental health system as well. And understanding what CPTSD is, understanding EMDR therapy, and understanding that every youth that comes into into the shelters, into foster care, into even mental health, are all complex, and it's not a one size fits all. So just understanding that when we discuss these things, having empathy, creating a safe environment, and making sure that these youth know that they're heard and prioritized.
Mm. So important. And if we had more time, I think this could be its own discussion, as some of these strategies that you just mentioned, is like EMDR therapy and mental wellness, and very specific things that we could, totally have another online learning event about. And so we're down to like the last couple of questions, and we have about 5 minutes left for this. So I'd like to start with you, Sherry, and in sharing that how unsheltered youth access your services, and then and the how do they get there? So we got to hear a lot of the outreach, and are there other venues, or are there other things that are components that you might have that help them to access your services?
For us, it's just making sure that we're out there being seen and being heard, and that the young people know of our services. Being out at powwows, community events, all of the above, and letting them know that Ingda Young Center is a safe space, that if they're in need, that they can call us. We also, as part of a youth homeless outreach network, the Youth Service Network, we now have ysn.mn or ysnmn.org through this collaboration, and each of our organizations is highlighted in there. It tells the number of beds, the types of food services that we might provide, all the other shelter services we provide. And then that connects them to an outreach worker who will go out and do an assessment for them and get them to a safe space in the interim. So that's one way. And I heard Frankie talking about child protection. And I know the shelter that Frankie's talking about, because we used to work with them closely back in the later 2000s as they were putting it together. But they, child protection, also we work closely with our child protection systems. We want our children here where they feel comfortable amongst those that look like them, talk like them, feel like them, practice ways like them. And so child protection and the tribes too will make referrals to our organization, to our home. Ingda Young Center means our home in Ojibwe. And, and it's just really engaging that. So making sure the young people know where we are, and making sure that the adults and systems know where we are in time of need.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherry. Really appreciate you giving us a lot of great information. And I'd like to just pass this quickly on to Frankie. We have about a couple of minutes left.
Okay, most of our referrals come from CPS, but we also take them from the courts. And we've been working with CPS in Rapid City, and they send a lot of Native youth from across the state to us. And so we have a 10-bed facility, but they come and go. And most of our referrals are from CPS, and CPS becomes involved in the family when the children are removed for maybe abuse in the home, or there is partying of drugs being used in the home. They'll remove the children because it's unsafe. Various reasons they'll remove the children, or they're experiencing some sexual abuse, or just general physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Neglect. I have a little foster boy that's 6 years old who became homeless because his grandmother passed away. And so the mother lived in a house, and her teenage children were using drugs. So housing took their house, closed it down, boarded up the windows. And so they all went living with other people, like couch surfing. And this little boy just took off and started walking into town from Oglala. And the police picked him up and couldn't find out who he belonged to. So they took him to CPS, and he ends up with us. So we're working with the parent, we're working with the mother, helping her find another home so that she can take him back and he'll feel safe.
Thank you, Frankie, and thank you for sharing that story. It just kind of brings it back to home to why this is so important and this work, because the stories and how they come to you are so different and challenging. And so I hope and wish you nothing but blessings and prayers continued for all three of you for this continued work. And we'd like to open the chat. Maybe you might have a question. If next slide too as well, please. You might have a question that you want to ask out loud, and we can unmute your mic to do that. But this is the time now, if you have any questions for our wisdom keepers, for Frankie, Sherry, or Alejandra. So looking to the chat for any questions, and I am looking at our chat here too. Thank you for those that have been making some comments. Here's a great question. Do you offer any training? And I'll just open this to any of you. Do any of you have any trainings that you offer? They're a new shelter coming in to Red Lake. So it'd be Sherry, Frankie, or Alejandra.
So all I have to say is, Raina, I'm so excited for you all. It's long overdue, and I love that tribes are creating their own shelters so that we can have placement of our young people within communities that are familiar to them. We often outsource our trainings with community elders and wisdom keepers that around the community, but also in the Twin Cities here, there's a lot of really great trainings within the network of homeless youth shelters. And so we often double up, triple up on those trainings. And there's a really great resource. It's called the, oh my gosh, what is it? It left me just that fast. Let me think about it, Raina. Oh my gosh, that is terrible. It just left me that quick. But they have all kinds of youth trainings that are required for, that are requirements within licensure. If you want to send me your email address, or connect with them and get my email address, I'd be happy to get you everything that you need to know.
Thank you, Sherry. And don't worry, that happens, I think, to a lot of us. We just things that we know, and just goes like, okay, where'd it go? So no worries. We have a question from Michelle Lyon. She just wants to say thank you for the cherished work you all do on behalf of our beautiful people. You are our blessings, and I cherish you. Will be in my prayers. That's wonderful. So appreciate that. Frankie, do you have anyone or outsource or as far as trainings go?
Well, we don't do trainings ourselves per se. We participate in a lot of trainings from different organizations and but our kids are the sheltered youth participate in a lot of training that we work with other groups to provide to them. But as a staff, we don't provide any training outside, but we participate in a lot of training, especially mental health and stuff like that.
Which is very critical, right? I think that's very
Yes.
critical to continue expanding their knowledge
Yeah.
as well. So, are there any other questions that we have from our guests, those that have joined us for our wisdom keepers here, or even comments? Okay, we have another one, and please forgive me if I do not say your name correctly. Floridama Antonio. She says, I would love to know more info for shelters or housing for youth. And she gave her email address in there. And then Benjamin Cahill, any advice on building trust with Indigenous youth? And let me kind of, I think this is good. I'd like to ask Alejandra if you could be first to address that question. Any advice building trust? And then also more information on shelters or housing for youth. But Alejandra, can you address the building trust with Indigenous youth?
Yes. So again, within building trust with Indigenous youth is transparency. I think that when we, are talking to youth and we're wanting their perspective and we're wanting, their lived experience, it's that understanding that we are really transparent with them and that we're really honest, because youth know. Youth definitely, like, we just are as smart as everybody else. So it's, just being really open and honest and just, making sure that they're always reassured and they're always, told, like, your voice matters, you are so important, making sure that they are also involved into that circle and just letting them know that, just being honest, making sure that they're heard, always, just giving that reassurance. And if, let's say that you are trying to build something within that lived experience, it's making sure that these youth are getting paid for their time, getting paid for their own lived experience being in these rooms, because again, like, these youth are still dealing with homelessness or housing instability, etc. So that's just a couple of things for me that I would say.
Thank you, Ale. And then I'd like to kind of come back. We only have a couple of minutes left, but if Frankie or Sherry would like to take on, the question of, more information for shelters and housing as far as the email goes with Antonio I so apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, Floridama. And then we have from Ansley Griffin from Omaha Tribe. This is great. They're opening their new facility soon, and they feel their culture is the best way to help their youth. A strong cultural connection is important. Thank you so much. And then Sherry also is giving you all her information, and she's given us the WIPA, is it YIPA.org, has a membership base and amazing trainers in sync with licensing requirements. That's awesome. That's really, really good information. So I think this is really important. And is there anything that you all would like to just give as any closing comments to this fantastic question, because we're going to move right on into our next slide, which I want to give you all opportunity for about a minute. Thank you, Sherry, for also giving your information.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. The youth that come here, you have to accept them just the way they are, and don't push them, don't challenge them, and don't try to change them. Just accept them for who they are, and they'll trust you after a while. You can't force it on them. You just have to let them know that you care and you're there. You're not going to change them. You're not going to judge them. You're not going to push them or change them or anything like that. Just be there for them, and they'll appreciate it after a while. And, just have a comforting humor with them. Don't be all serious. Kids like humor. Just play along with them, and they'll learn to trust you. It really takes dedication. There's a lady here on the Pine Ridge Reservation, Barbara Dolknife. She opened her own shelter with no resources whatsoever. She just asked housing for this house, and he said, sure. She opened the house up. She started begging around for donations. She got cribs. She takes the kids from birth through up to 12-year-olds, and we take them from 12 up to 18. But she's, there's times when she's had 6 infants, and she's really a dedicated person, and that's what you have to be, because it's hard work, and you really get discouraged at times. You have to be dedicated to helping them. You can't help them all, but most of them you can be there for them.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you for that wisdom at the end there. And I really appreciate your wisdom and sharing with us. And I want to thank all of you, Frankie, Alejandra, Sherry, for really giving us some real solid information here today during our online learning event. And I also want to add that, TYRC can also support in your development of strategies to collect baseline data. And we'd like to go to the next slide and just kind of lead right on into Sister Deb. If you can share the importance of data collection as we begin to close here in a minute.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much to the Wisdom Keepers. I really learned a lot, and especially the highlights of how you're all helping and the important work that you're doing. Very critical to sustainability for our communities and our tribes. So talking about the importance of data collection. So effective data collection in Indian country is essential. It's an essential need and critically important because it informs policymakers at the federal, tribal, and state level, because they depend on the data to develop policy that effectively meets the needs of Native people. And the only way that policymakers are going to be able to do that is if Native people, we collect our own data, because oftentimes we're classified by race and ethnicity, and that's just too broad, and it leaves room for misclassification in a lot of our needs, and also leaving out some of the specific needs of our youth, especially. So by collecting our own data, that's going to help us address those specific needs of our youth, our families, and community, because everything interconnects. Everyone is important, and our youth need that support. So that data collection helps to inform our leadership in helping to assist those in need. I really enjoyed everything that everyone had to say about youth and how they're helping them, because ideally a youth shelter is very important so that it can serve its purpose as in helping youth in short-term stay. And just knowing our youth shelter here in Pine Ridge with Tui Frankie, I know that So the wisdom that she shares, that's very critical in engaging youth and helping youth to be aware and know that the youth shelter is a safe place to go, because parents are not demonized, families are not demonized. And those are some of the misclassifications that happened in the past. And we are in fortunate times where there is enough awareness and education and caring people like Tui Frankie and the rest of the panelists and all of our tribal leadership, our grantees that care enough to do this work. And tribal programs and organizations have the ability to collect accurate data, because everyone's geographical location is different. Their needs are different. Their needs are genuine and authentic, and collecting that data is the only way to effectively address that. Next slide. So I just also wanted to share that as our audience, as grantees, that data collection, the process of documenting information from various sources and organizing it into a data set. And I just wanted to point that out, because the data sets that are created from various sources, such as your surveys, assessments, notes, demographic information that are useful for the purpose of visualization, validating research, and most commonly for statistical analysis and reports that inform decision making. So the connection between data collection and data set is that the collection that you attain, a data set should always be developed so you can accurately store that. And it's more efficiently when you are addressing your reports and such. Next slide. And just sharing a page of data collection in regards to the mapping of the journey guide. I really like that tool because it's a guide and specific to again map your pathway. So it really meets its purpose. And the data collection section in that, I'm sure all of you recognize this page. This is exactly a good illustration of data collection and a data set. So with all of your data collection, you can insert the variables that are relevant to who you are and what your needs are, because although a lot of these grants have the same objective and purposes, your needs are always going to be different. Your needs are always going to be unique. So this kind of gives you that guidance and the ability to incorporate your own variables into the data set. So whenever you do that, then it fits perfectly into this, which would look like a the data set, and then kind of like a leading into a database to store your information. If anyone has any questions, I don't know how we are on time, but I hope I'm not too rushing anyone, but there's no question. The next slide.
Thank you, Sister Deb. And I think that is always important to share, right, that data and how, and really, you know, it's kind of going back to that historical aspect of, you know, we were already data collectors, and so, you know, tracking and helping to tell our story the way we want the story to be told is really important. So thank you so much, Sister, for sharing that with us in regards to collecting the data. And here we're looking at this slide, you know, resources. And I'd like to also add, for those that have resources that may have not been shared so far, or that may not be on these next two slides, to please add in the chat, maybe some resources that you may have or have accessed, especially for those, to help those that are starting up their shelter homes. Just prayers and blessings to you. And I think it's so important. So, we have a couple here from the Clearinghouse, and also, culture as our protective factor. That was really important, as we're sharing. And I think sometimes, in our communities, that's just a given, right? That our culture is just who we are. And I think that's important. And looking at our culture as a resource and who you can identify in your communities. We also added here this link on preventing human trafficking in our Native youth. And that's obviously a big conversation that is happening among all of our communities, urban and our rural areas. Next slide, please. I want to make sure that you have the accessibility here to some of these other resources, and some of the conversations that we didn't get into as deep, but making sure that you're looking at the prevalence of trading sex among high school students in Minnesota. There's some resources there for the Journal of Adolescent Health, and prevalence and correlates of homelessness among American Indian Alaska Native youth. Taking another look at this link here, and really kind of looking at what is out there and the data that you might have. So we really want to make sure you also take a look at what Sherry had sent, ypa.org, and we want to make sure we add that into our chat. Also, there will be accessibility to reaching out to Sherry, and to Frankie and Alejandra. We will have a recording of this, and so you will have accessibility on the Tribal Youth Resource Center's website, and you'll be able to take a look at that later. Let's go ahead and as we're wrapping this here, we're going to move into evaluations, but I really want to thank you again, Frankie, Alejandra, Sherry, for your wisdom, for your hearts, for this continuous work in helping our young people in our communities and our families. And for those of you that are doing this work, just sending that good prayers, that good medicine to you. Thank you so much, because our children, our people deserve only the best, and you are giving that to them. So I'd like to just hand this on off to Antonia with the evaluation slide. And again, as co-host Jerry Bruno from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, I thank you so much for your time today. We will have another slide after this. So Antonia. So to take a moment to answer the evaluation. And as you're answering this evaluation, I think the thing I'd like to add is that, after these kinds of conversations, and as much as we're trying to, be strength-based and give you this good information, I just suggest, to take a walk, shake it off, use medicine, drink some water, take some space for yourself, and knowing that this is really powerful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And once we've completed the evaluation slide, Antonia, you can move us to the next slide once that's been completed. We have someone, Rosemary, is not able to access the evaluation. Is there a way to get this to them? Thank you, Rosemary, for letting us know. She put that the poll back up for the evaluation. And let's see if you are able to access it now. And what we'd like to do is bring this to a proper closing. And we'd like to invite Alejandra to, as our young person and her youth strong voice, to give us a closing for today. So even though we have the poll up, we would go ahead and like to invite you up, Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. First acknowledging the land that we're on, Turtle Island. I hope everyone, feels blessed and understands that, to the Creator, thank you so much for bringing us all here together. And I hope that everybody, has safe travels home, has a really good day today, and that understands a deeper meaning into our youth and how we can help our youth. I'm sending love to our community in Maui right now. I know that they are also dealing with homelessness because of the fires, making sure that all of our relatives are heard and needed. I want to thank this organization for having us here and having me here. And I'm just so thankful for all of us to be here. And and thank you all for being here as well.
Thank you, Ale. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.